Okay, it's time to talk about recording bass guitar. I've been a bass guitar player for a long time. Not the greatest bass player in the world, but do know a lot about recording bass from working with some really great players like Benny. Recording bass is usually done via direct line, meaning you plug your bass right into the preamp like we have back here. We're using the DI input on the preamp. We gain the level there and record that right into whatever you're recording, whether it's even a tape machine. So in this case with the bass, things to watch out for and to be careful of are really hot spots on the bass for starters. I've heard a lot of basses where when you play something on the high string, it has no low end as opposed to the low strings, which will have a ton of really low, woofy low end. I've heard really expensive basses, like over $3,000, that when you hit the low E string or the B string, they just have tons of low end. And then when you're mixing it, all of a sudden your rhythm section is bouncing around because you have a lot of low end and then no low end because of the way the bass is being played with this boomy low end and hot spots on different strings. So a good thing to look out for with a bass is to make sure that it has a nice, even feel to it. Like for instance, when I was checking out this bass, I was really impressed because it had good low end on every string. Every string was very even in that regard. This particular bass, the low end on the E string is a little heavy, so I usually, when I'm recording it, use a high-pass filter to roll the low stuff off around 45 cycles, because that stuff is just going to make woofers shake unnecessarily. But once again, it's a taste thing. So once again, when recording bass, usually use a DI. Sometimes people will put a mic on the bass cabinet. That's typical as well, but 9 times out of 10 from all the bass recording I've seen, it's been done via a DI. A big part of getting really good bass tones is a good mic pre. Huge in terms of bass. You'll find that less expensive microphone preamps just don't have that full, rich low end, or they'll have dips and curves in the low end, so it will create hot spots. Bad thing. Having good strings on the bass is important as well. That'll make the high end of the bass come through. So make sure that you're keeping your strings pretty clean and using a good cable. If I didn't mention that already, make sure you're using a high quality cable with bass. Otherwise the low end will disappear. If you use like a cheaper guitar cable, sometimes on guitar that's cool. On bass generally it's not because the low end goes away. So from there, really getting a nice even full tone into your mixing system, or in this case Pro Tools, is important, and from there we could start to compress and mix it. The thing with bass, if you have a nice tone going in, you have to do less fixing, and then you can use more EQ and compression for taste instead of fixing the tone. So that's about all I have to say on bass. Having a good bass itself, really important. Once I got this bass here, I love this bass. This is a Fender Jazz bass, very standard, but this particular one is extremely sweet. I really was lucky when I found this. A buddy of mine who works at a music store made me play this thing when I went in one day, and I ended up getting it a couple days later because I fell in love with it. Finding a good instrument is always important and can take a long time. So that's important. And good bass player, a good musician can make any piece of junk bass just about sound great. So that's about it for bass recording. Let's move on to guitar recording.